Thank you so much, Mihir. That was a wonderful introduction, and I see what you mean about being an impresario and getting us all going, and it's totally great to be here, even though I can't see you because of the lights. And like he said, we're all extremely nervous because 8 minutes is impossible for us, but I've told John he just has to give me more time, okay? So, otherwise, he's not going to get a grade. Okay, so let's see. So what I want to talk about today is to set the tone for our topic tonight, which is what migration is going to look like in the future. So I want you to just bear with me as I kind of riff on a few ideas about where I think it's going and what's going to happen in the future, right? So I'm going to shape this around two main themes. The first one is that I think what's going to happen in the future is that migration is going to increase. But it's not going to increase much beyond the level that it's at now, which perhaps you know. If we think about international migration, the definition of an international migrant is someone who's lived in another country for about a year in a country not of their birth. Now, I often ask my class to guess how many international migrants there are in the world today. So I won't do that now, but you might think about it, or perhaps you know. And the fact of the matter is, there are, as of last year, according to the UN, 258 million migrants in the world, international migrants who are living in a country not of their birth, and that includes refugees. But the interesting piece of this is that that number constitutes about 3.3% of the world's population. And what's also interesting is that that percentage is virtually the same. It's a little bit higher. Back in 1960, it was 2.6% of the world's population. So the proportion of the world's population who are migrating across borders is not really changing that much. It means that 97% of the world is not moving across borders. They're staying home. Okay, but we are going to see an absolute number increase because the world's population is increasing. So we will see more migrants. And the second theme that I want to talk about is that where I think it's all happening and where I think migration is going to happen even more is it's going to be a matter of urbanization. Migrants today are moving into cities. So that's what I want to talk about today. So this increasing migration, like I said, the absolute number is increasing. The proportion is kind of increasing a little bit, not really, but it means that it's increasing. So why is it increasing? So we could think about the forces, the enablers of migration. And I think there are a couple of them. One of the most important enablers is that migration happens in the context of networks. If you have a family or some kind of connection in another country, that network connection will enable you both to move in the first place and to settle into your destination area much more successfully. They'll help you find a job, they'll help you find housing, help you find access to services, and so forth. And so networks are very important in enabling migration. And because the number of migrants is increasing, the networks are increasing and strengthening. And so that is a potent force in enabling migration in the future. So that's the one enabler, the thing pushing migration. The other thing is technology, and particularly communications technology. Smartphones, an iPhone was invented, in 2007? Well, came into existence in 2007. That's just 10 or 11 years ago. But smartphones have really transformed the way that migration happens. If you have a smartphone, it will help you figure out your route. It will help you access a smuggler. It will help you transfer money, either send money or receive money. It will help you migrate. And it will help all of your others migrate too. And as this communications technology becomes more sophisticated, it is going to act in the interests of migrants. So these are two very potent forces that are going to push migration. Now, of course, there are also forces acting to inhibit and prevent migration, and we're very familiar with them. One is that governments in destination countries don't want migrants, and so they are hardening their borders. Securitizing is the term we use, increasing the security and the inability of people to cross borders by building walls and fences and minefields and berms and whatever you want to try to prevent people from crossing. That's one force against it. And the second, of course, is the political force in the form of populist politicians who fear-monger amongst us, the public, using migrants and refugees as a way to promote their message of fear and threat from migrants. Now, my view that these two forces are acting against migration will not be enough to counter the forces that will enable it. Okay, so I think there's going to be increasing migration. Where is it all happening? Like I said, we live in an urbanizing world. So back in 2005, that blue line at the bottom is the urban population of the world. It crossed over, and now we are in ever-increasing numbers of people. The proportion of people living in urban settings is predicted by the UN to be about 68% by 2030. Today, it's about 55%. So people are moving into cities, and it doesn't matter whether you're moving across borders or the even larger number of people who are internal migrants who are moving within their own countries and are moving from their rural areas to the cities in their own countries. So one of the implications of this, sorry, this is so small, but what these two slides are showing is back in 1970, this is showing the growth rate of cities, but what I particularly want to draw your attention to is the rise of mega cities. Mega cities are cities with populations of more than 10 million people. Today, there are 33 mega cities in the world, and it's predicted that by 2030, there will be 43 mega cities in the world, and most of those new cities will be in developing countries. So we're looking at an urbanization that is very much focused around primary cities. That's often the capitals of countries, but also secondary cities, second cities of countries. And so that's a big shift that's happening, right? So what are some of the implications of all this? Okay, let's think about the implications of urbanization and increased migration. Let's look at it first on the national level. Nationally, what does it mean that people are moving into cities? Well, one possibility, and I find this very interesting to think about, especially from an environmental point of view, is if people are moving into the cities, they're leaving the countryside. Does that mean we're going to see rural depopulation in countries? Are people going to vacate those little villages and towns? And what would that mean for environmentally? If we don't have sprawl in those, if they don't have growth in the little towns, if all the growth is happening in the main towns, what could that mean? But also, what does it mean socially? Does it mean that we will see increasing rural impoverization as the rural areas become drained of young people, of brain power, and so forth? So that's a big issue we need to think about. What does it mean for cities? Many things. Many of you, I'm sure, have spent time in the cities of the South, particularly the large cities of the South. And it doesn't even have to be the cities of the South to know what problems traffic congestion alone can cause, how much time it wastes, what kinds of pollution problems it creates, how it slows down everything, how it inhibits access to services, how it creates problems for everyone across the board, not just poor people, but rich people too. We see loss of green space. In cities that you travel in, you see fewer and fewer parks, areas of green space, trees, as the ever-burgeoning concrete jungle takes over the city. There are many other implications of this. One is when people come into these areas, migrants and refugees, you're kidding. They are John's just messing with me now, right, John? Okay, so we're seeing many problems. Okay, I'm going to skim right along. Okay, just a few little ideas about how it's going to look in the future. What could we imagine the future to look like? We could imagine gated cities, right? We could imagine places where cities are divided. We could imagine more camps in cities. There are already cities with refugee camps in the middle of them. We could imagine walled cities. And if anybody knows what this city is, tell me afterwards, and I'll give you a prize. We can, how would technology transform cities? We can imagine, and there is really interesting work out there, futuristic studies about how cities will happen, vertical cities that are taking place at many different levels, leaving the area around the city open for green space and agricultural areas. Urban agriculture. We can think of many ways in which technology will transform cities in order to enable it to absorb migrants. But I want to leave you with this thought, which is the most important thing that we have to consider for the future is not what will happen to cities in terms of the technology and so forth, but what will happen to the migrants and refugees who will be in these cities, who are still facing the same discrimination, the same political problems, the same lack of access to services, the same poverty, the same lack of rights that they do today. And that's going to be the biggest area where we need your ideas to help us think how we're going to address this. Thank you.